had all this hope, like you're going to move forward, and boom, the room gets deflated, the energy is sucked out. So you can do something as soft as that, all the way up to a very hard credit check, and obviously check your local regulations there, and with your financing partners, but all the way to doing a hard credit check before they get into the office. Actually, you just saved them time. You saved your office time, but think about it, you saved the patient time. The patient's going to appreciate, hey, look, I think at this point in time, it's not best for you to move forward with the consultation, but let's follow up in 3 months. Let's follow up in 6 months. Yeah. Here's some, and you can pull an article for how to get your credit up, right? Just do these simple steps.
You could be a hero. You could be a hero for them rather than a big fat zero in the office and getting denied and embarrassed and all that. Welcome to another episode of the Full Arch Advantage podcast. My name is Gary Bird. I am the founder of SMC National, where we help you create, convert, and close more full arch cases. And today I have Jack, who is our director of marketing at SMC, and we're going to be talking about an interesting topic. So something that every office has dealt with before is they've had a lot of new patient leads come in that don't necessarily convert to quality patients. And you have to use your team to kind of filter through those and work through those. And then nobody accepts treatment. And of course, nobody likes that you just wasted all this marketing time and energy. You've also wasted your team's time and energy and the doctor's time and energy. And it's just a big fat zero. And there's actually something that we've been working on that helps solve that. And what it does, it's around credit checks and actually getting approvals or soft approvals for people before they come in. And so I wanted to talk through that today with you, Jack, and kind of pick your brain on what we have in place, what's coming soon, and what you've been seeing that works well for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this conversation stems from the fact that, when your practice is doing marketing for full arch cases, full mouth dental implants, what you'll run into very often, and what can be probably the most frustrating, more frustrating than a no-show, no call, no show, more frustrating than a cancellation, and more frustrating than a patient that is just a shopper, right? And you can't even get to schedule, is a patient that is super motivated, schedules their appointment, shows up on time, confirms, does everything right. You have a great consultation. Then you go to get them approved for financing. They're ready to go, and they get denied. And you try you try your different methods or your specific process and your different financing partners, and no matter what, this patient is denied. And at that point, it puts the office and the patient in a really awkward scenario. Yep. Everyone was excited and had all this hope, like you're going to move forward, and boom, the room gets deflated, the energy is sucked out. And so there's a couple ways that we're working with our practices to help combat that. And there's very involved ways you can do it. There's very soft ways you can do it. But it all starts with having financial conversations before they walk through the door. And there's different levels to this. You can get as simple as when doing your marketing and you're doing your lead, asking them what their credit score is, that, the range of their credit score, and what they would be able to afford monthly there. So you can do something as soft as that, all the way up to a very hard credit check, and obviously check your local regulations there, and with your financing partners, but all the way to doing a hard credit check before they get into the office. So there's a lot of different in-betweens, but one thing that we're working on in the future is actually what we see as kind of the best of both worlds. It is a soft credit check, and what it does is you don't necessarily need patient intent. It's not actually like a credit check on their personal level. So, no social security number. They don't need to pass that out. Just using the information you can collect that they've given you in just the simple lead form. You're able to do a credit check in the sense that it will tell you based off of just factors such as their area code, where they live, and different things like that. Their likeliness to get approved when it comes to financing. Yeah. And so this is a good in-between, right? It's not 100%, but 70 to 90, 80% of the time, you're going to get a green light or a red light, and be able to have those conversations. And then the great thing is, let's say the patient is a red light. They're not approved. It's still, I think they appreciate, everyone's afraid like, oh no, what do I do when the patient is disapproved? Well, actually, you just saved them time. You saved your office time. But think about it. You saved the patient time. The patient's going to appreciate, hey, look, I think at this point in time, it's not best for you to move forward with the consultation, but let's follow up in 3 months. Let's follow up in 6 months. Here's some, and you can pull an article for how to get your credit up, right? Just do these simple steps. Like Apple.
You could be a hero
for
them rather than. Sorry to disrupt the show, but I got something crazy to share with you. We are attempting to connect with all of our listeners. We have thousands of people that listen to this podcast, and we want to meet you in person. We have 4 events coming up, and I want to give you a discount code that you can use for the next week to save $300 off your ticket. The discount code is Gary Bird, and the link is going to be just down below. You can also go to smcnational.com/events. I hope to connect with you in person and help each other grow our businesses. Can't wait to see you soon. A big fat zero in the office and getting denied and embarrassed and all that.
100%. And think about this. Their need for oral care is not going to go away, right? And if they walked into any other office, they're going to get denied. Yep. So now you've just elevated your trust for this patient massively. And so, like we said, that need's not going away in 3, 6, 9, 12 months. Whenever they get their credit figured out and get to a place where they're able to be approved, guess what? They're going to consider you. They're going to remember that conversation. And obviously, you can do stuff, put them in an email campaign, put reminders in your CRM to follow up with them in 3, 6, 9 months to get a feel of where they're at. They're going to remember you. You're going to have elevated yourself above all your other competitors. And you just saved your office a bunch of time. You have this patient that's super motivated, but you save your doctors and your TCs and your office just a bunch of time without having to do what we talked about in the beginning, where you get this patient that is ready to go, but just financially they can't get approved. So these are some of the things that we're working on. And we've seen just a massive benefit to our practices and our patients alike in saving time, making it a seamless experience.
Yeah, that's the part right there, right? It's just because you're not really changing anything. It's like, here's the patient journey. I'm getting approval at the end. All you're trying to do is move it to the beginning to save everybody a bunch of time. And the further you can move that to the front, the more time and energy and pain you're going to save for both sides. So it's a win for everybody that these kind of options are coming out. Is there anything else to think through from the office standpoint that they should be aware of, either pros or cons?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's super important, what a lot of offices or groups that do this miss, is they have that conversation way too early, right? So when it comes to any sort of large case treatment, and really that's treatment over, $1,000, $2,000, where it's a major life purchase, what happens first before you get into the price, you have to establish the value of your product, your service, the outcomes, right? And so what happens is you'll have these practices that are like, okay, we got this service when it comes to financing, all of that. And they'll do that first. They'll have all financial conversations right out of the gate, the first thing that they're talking to with the patient. And what that does is at that point, you haven't sold your practice. You haven't sold them the dream on the outcomes you're going to deliver them. So all you're talking here is about price. And keep in mind, you're probably not the cheapest, right? For a lot of our practices, they can't compete.
There's already
they can't compete with the big groups that are doing this at scale. And so, like you said, there's always somebody cheaper.
Or Mexico, these other countries
now
that are doing it. They'll
instantly compare you on price, because that's the first conversation. Keep in mind, your first impression, that first conversation, that just sets the tone for the remainder of the call. Everything you say from that point out, they're going to judge back to the beginning of the call. So if everything was price, that's what it's all going to go back to. So what would reach in our offices and what our team does as well is everything is about value and outcomes. You have that conversation a lot of times, and it can be frustrating, right? Because you'll get through a 10, 15-minute call where you get this patient super bought in, you get them ready to go, and then you have that financial conversation, and it kills it, right? They're like, oh, hey, it's dead on arrival. And it's like, man, I wish I would have had that first. But a lot of times, if you have that conversation first, especially for the patients that are approved and that would move forward, it just changes the whole dynamic where those really good patients are going to stop right at the beginning because it's sticker shock. But if you've gotten them through all of the value, all of the outcome, the benefits you're going to provide for them, the life-changing experiences that they're going to go through, and then talk about finances, they're like, well, I get it, this is expensive, but they have everything in mind that you just talked to them about. And it's a much easier conversation at that point.
Love it. Yeah, there's just a lot of new options that people have out there, and most practices don't even realize that these kind of options exist. One of the things that aren't out yet, but it will be soon, I'm actually working with a company. It was actually supposed to come out in March, but because of all the bank closures, they weren't able to roll it out. Hopefully they roll it out later this year. What they're actually doing is giving the office the capability to carry the risk of the financing, meaning you get the monthly payments. Now you might think, well, man, I don't want that responsibility. They actually service the whole thing for you. And so what happens is they will tell you this person has a 10% failure likely, or 20% failure, or 30%. So then you can pick your threshold of, look, we're not going below 30% or 20% or whatever. And then you adjust your fees to make up for that. So 100% of people that say yes, you just have to up your fees to cover the people who aren't going to be able to pay. But the cool part is now you're building recurring monthly revenue that's coming into your practice as a residual. Once that comes out, I think that's going to be another great tool, but we're not quite there yet. And anything else that you're seeing on this front that is helpful to offices?
No, I think we covered most of it. And I think just when it comes to financing, right, the biggest thing I always tell our practices, teams we train, our internal teams, is it's a very important piece of the funnel, right? It's one of the most paramount, especially when it's this big of a price point. But nothing really matters more than getting those patients bought in on the value first. You can have all of the different options when it comes to financing. You can have all, to ensure that you're not wasting your office's time. But at the end of the day, let's say you're getting all patients that are getting approved for financing and they have money, either cash on hand, they're ready to go. What's going to differentiate you from all the other practices when they have that money is, are you able to properly sell the value of your service and your practice to these patients? So as long as we don't neglect that, and we still work to get all these other things in place, where it comes to the financing, to have a seamless experience and make sure that our patients have it as easy as possible, and so they can have clear answers really quickly, that's great. But we have to still remember that that does not trump getting the patients bought in on the value and the outcomes they're going to get from our treatment.
Yep. I love it. Thanks so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right. Peace.